So thanks everyone for joining us for this Homelessness Innovation Fund information session. I'll let you all know at the beginning it is being recorded. I'm Kim Campbell. I'm the Acting Director of Homelessness Strategy and Innovation with Homes New South Wales. And our big thanks to Homelessness New South Wales for hosting this information session today. I'll hand over to Dom to get us going.
And hello, everyone. It's great to see so many people here today. My name's Dom Rowe, and I'm the CEO of Homelessness New South Wales. We've got a really informative call planned for today. You'll note that your mics and cameras are disabled, but you'll still be able to use the chat if you have any questions that you wish to ask, which will be answered at the end. So with that, we might move to the next slide. So I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands that we are meeting here today. I'm coming from Gadigal lands in the south of Sydney. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters and skies of New South Wales. I'd also like to especially acknowledge and pay my respects to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are joining us here today. Next slide. So today we've got a jam-packed agenda, which there will be time for questions at the end. We'll have an overview of the Homelessness Innovation Fund, as we fondly call the HIF, and the two grant programs. There'll be a snapshot of round 1 and 2 outcomes. Key information around the assessment process and program requirements will happen so that you're prepared for round 3. There'll be successful and unsuccessful themes of the proposals that have been received so far, and then we'll be having a Q&A. We'll be ending the call with further information and next steps. And with that, I'm going to pass back to Kim.
Thanks so much, Dom. And I will also acknowledge we've got Damoni Bishop in with us. She's provided our probity oversight throughout the whole process. So thanks, Damoni, for being with us. So the Homelessness Innovation Fund, I think many of you already know lots of this information, but it's always good to refresh us on it. The HIF was allocated a total of $100 million over 4 years in last year's state budget. 30 million of that was allocated to this year through 2 grant programs. One, the Reforming Temporary Accommodation program, which aims to reduce the current demand on and costs of providing temporary accommodation. Our second grant program is the Service Reform and Innovation program, which supports service reform and innovation. We're really clever with our titles, aren't we? In the homelessness service system, and it's really meant to be that much more wide open gate. There are 2 assessments rounds that have now been complete. The second assessment round applicants were notified this week whether they were successful or not, and information on that will be published over the next 2 weeks as we finalise those contracts. The third and final round is now open and will close on the 30th of April at 5 p.m. and we are aiming to make announcements about that by the end of June. So again, quite a tight turnaround for us. There's always more information on the HIF website with links to both grant programs. It includes the program guidelines, which we really want to point out has separate objectives and criteria for the 2 different programs, particularly in the Reforming Temporary Accommodation program. So do make use of those. Some frequently asked questions and recordings and slides of the information briefings, just like this one. So any session that we've done previously around the HIF is recorded and available there, including the slides. Today's will be added to that as soon as we can. And any questions that are asked today, we'll compare those against the FAQs that we've done previously. If there's new questions or further clarification, we will be updating those as well in the coming week or 2. We're very conscious that it's only 4 weeks till the grant closes, the grant rounds close, and so we'll be getting this information out as quickly as possible. It's really helpful to go back and look at those if you haven't put in a previous application and you're considering it. It's good to have the full picture across each of the 2 rounds as to what's been said or good clarity on them. Okay, next slide. Thanks. So a quick overview. I will remind you any information around the second offer is second round is on offers because we are still finalising those. So just think when I say a grant, I mean an offer. So in total, across the 2 rounds, we've received 160 applications across the 2 programs. There's been 42 grants offered in total so far, reaching $15 million in total grants. 18 were offered in the latest round across the two, so service reform and reforming temporary accommodation. 29 have been offered in total across the two rounds for service reform and innovation, and 13 offered in total for reforming temporary accommodation. There's more information, there's some links there on the two grant programs. Thanks. Next slide. So we'll go through a bit of a reminder around the process and requirements, and then we'll talk through some themes that we've seen in this latest assessment round and the previous assessment round. So next slide. Thank you. So just a quick reminder of the process overall is that the HIF round closes, so the next one closes on the 30th of April. There are some eligibility checks concluded by our partnerships team. So that's there's some certain eligibility in terms of are you intending to become a registered CHP or accredited SHS. There's also some around insurance and other items. So that's checked first. Those anybody that's passed the eligibility check is then passed on to our assessment team, which is a group of experienced staff who assess the applications against the criteria for that particular program. And they provide a scoring and also some comments for the panel consideration. We were very thankful in this latest assessment that where we had proposals from Aboriginal-led organisations, at least one member of the assessment team was an Aboriginal staff member looking at those, and it is our intention that that would be the same for the third round. From there, proposals are all sent to the assessment panel, which is a team of at least 5 expert panel members who make the final recommendations on those successful applications, and we have a senior external to homes Aboriginal person who assists us in that panel as a key member. Then there is the final approval of the grant. So the panel recommendations are sent up to the delegate of the minister, which in this case is Beck Pinkston as the CEO of Homes. She's been delegated that approval by Minister Jackson. That is then we notify the applicants of the outcomes, both successful and unsuccessful, and that's followed by announcements as soon as we can make any information public. And then the HIF projects commence after finalising their grant funding agreements. So those are the steps in the process, and we work through those and as quickly as we can because we know that everybody's keen to hear the outcomes. So we're right in between, we're right on that second to last dot in that we've notified applicants for round 2. There will be announcements coming as soon as those grant funding agreements are finalised. Thanks. Next slide. So some of the requirements to be really careful about and considerate of as you put in your proposals is public liability needs to be current or purchased at the time of submission and for a minimum of $10 million. There needs to be alignment with the grant scheme streams. So applications must align and meet criteria for the appropriate grant stream that it's submitted against. There are specific criteria for the reforming temporary accommodation stream and the service reform and innovation stream. If the panel thinks that it may not be in the right stream, we do not have the ability to swap it to the other stream. So it's really important that you submit it in the stream that is correct for you and address all of the guidelines for that particular stream. If you're not sure, put it into both. There's absolutely nothing that stops you having multiple applications in multiple streams. But just to be very clear, the panel and the assessment team can't swap what stream you've submitted it in. Items above $2,000 must be include clearly defined expenditure with quotes attached. We only need one quote for each item. We don't need comparable quotes, but we do need quotes for every item over $2,000. Supported TA or TA in areas that are covered by the Social Housing Management Transfer or SHMIT, so where a CHP provides the housing and homelessness responses on behalf of Homes New South Wales. Applicants offering supported TA in those locations managed by a CHP in what we refer to as a SHMIT area need to partner with the community housing provider managing the area. We are not able to assess proposals from those within those areas for supported TA without the CHP as part of the proposal. So capital expenditure, the purchase of capital items of up to $5,000 may be generally accepted, with larger items considered on a case-by-case basis. Our main considerations are that items should align with program objectives and may not make a profit for the applicant. What we look at is it's something you can sell at the end of the grant program to recoup the money and therefore change the use of the money provided in the grant. Partial funding, a recommendation from the panel may be for partial funding. Applicants have the option to agree or decline on that proposed funding. It does mean that if you don't ask for something, you can't get it, so it is worth asking for it. It is itemised and the panel can then make considerations across the full proposal. Cut-off date for assessments and applications are not reconsidered at each assessment round, only those submitted between the cut-off dates between those. So you are welcome to update your original proposal, particularly if you've got feedback on it following a round, and you can reapply in the following round. As I said, there's no limit to the number or streams you can apply in, and we really do encourage you to get some feedback on it and then resubmit once you've updated it, but we don't just transfer them over. Defining costs. So applications need to be clear about how the funding will be applied. Vague lines such as operating costs are excluded, marked down or considered for partial funding to avoid the grant being used for business as usual or general operating costs. And there's some more information in the guidelines about what is considered general operating costs. Thanks. Next slide. How the applications are assessed. So we look, does it meet the program criteria and objectives? So applications are assessed against the relevant program criteria for the program they are submitted against. I'm going to say it quite repeatedly because we have seen, unfortunately, some proposals get tripped up by being placed in the wrong stream. We're providing that feedback directly to those applicants, but we do want to make it very clear that we can't swap the streams. So do err on the side of making sure it's in the right stream and that you've addressed the particular guidelines and criteria for that stream. We do mention statewide impact. What that is looking at is not necessarily penalising any that are location specific, but we look at locations and value for money. We take that into account in the final list of recommendations by the panel to ensure that we have a fair spread across where we've had proposals that might double up in an area or look to impact one area more than another. We do take that into consideration. Sustainability beyond the grant. This is a key assessment point and one that the panel and the assessment team spend quite a lot of time understanding. And we consider the impact, what impact the grant has beyond the grant period. So we look at when that 12 months of funding ceases, what will exist that was a benefit from the grant. It might be knowledge, it might be available information or frameworks, it might be the testing of a new model, it might be that particularly where there's been investment in property or bringing things online through the grant. It is absolutely something that the panel and the assessment team look at very carefully to ensure that the grant continues to have impact beyond the 12-month period. Clarity of impact is another piece that we look at. Proposals need to clearly state how many clients or how much accommodation or the product that's produced so that the impact of the proposal is clearly defined. You are all very wonderful organisations and we don't necessarily need lots of information about you as an organisation that we could get from a website per se. We want to know what the impact of the project or the grant will be. So the clearer you can be on those pieces, the clearer your proposal is. I often say one of the best people in your organisation to write these proposals or to be involved is often your business manager or your ops manager, because they can state in a couple of sentences the impact that the grant would have. The clarity of cohort management. Proposals for congregate accommodation or communal spaces need to identify if there was a target cohort or how different cohorts would be managed. For instance, single men and women or where children are included. So if you're talking about creating accommodation or operating accommodation where there might be a shared kitchen, shared common space, shared access, we do consider women who may not know each other. Will they be safe in the space? Do they have control over who's coming in and out of that area? I'm particularly mindful of children in those accommodation spaces, and how is their safety being considered if there's those communal areas. So if you don't speak to it, the panel will will often mark down if we don't think that you've taken that into consideration. The final one around how we assess the proposals is in-kind contributions. We love looking at these, and there's some fantastic ones mentioned. So be clear on the support provided from an existing service, including office space, management, training of staff, access to other facilities, community relationships. It's all of value and really impacts the success of the grant and the innovation of the proposal that you've submitted. So don't hold back on telling us in that in-kind contributions question about the work that you are doing that this links into, and that the clients who are benefiting from the grant would also have access to. Okay, next slide. Nikki, I can see you've got a question. Is individual feedback available on our unsuccessful submissions? Yes, absolutely. We can provide you some written feedback from the panel and then go from there. But see if today answers some of your questions. We hope that it does. So some general feedback and examples on the themes of success. Yes, the recording is available. It will be available online, and we'll let you know when it's available, and the slides are also available. Okay, so next slide. So these are examples or themes around what has been successful both in this round and the previous round, and we hope that it really helps you improve your proposals to be clear on the things that the panel is looking at. The first one is around value for money and impact on TA. So particularly in the reforming temporary accommodation stream, the proposal needs to show clear benefits compared to the cost of TA, reduce the need for TA, and have cost-effective rates and sustainable revenue models. There's a few pieces in there, and it's worthwhile unpacking each of those if you're submitting a proposal into the reforming temporary accommodation stream. Particularly around how does the cost of the grant compare to the equivalent cost in TA? Is the per night rate that you are proposing in it that you will negotiate with housing services, how does that compare to our information provided about average rates for your area? And is it a sustainable revenue model? So what happens after the grant period to the program that's been set up or to the accommodation that's been set up? So do take some time to address each of those in your proposal. Operational capacity and proven models. So demonstrating effective tenancy management and case management using proven service delivery models that support noted target groups. So we do look at, are you able to deliver what you're proposing to deliver? And you get to speak to that in your proposals and submissions. And so it is worthwhile explaining that for the panel so that there's confidence you have the capacity to deliver what you're saying you will. Innovation and added capacity, particularly the Service Reform and Innovation Grant, is really targeted at addressing system gaps or adding accommodation in high demand areas with creative approaches or by extending successful projects. We do unfortunately get a lot of proposals, I'll speak more about this in the next slide, where it sounds very much like more service delivery as in a gap funding. We really are looking at adding capacity to the system or filling particular gaps. So be clear about what your proposal is addressing particularly and what it's adding to the system. Meanwhile, or interim use or modern methods of construction is a really easy yes from the panel in most circumstances. So use of existing buildings, creative models like tiny homes, infilling space that you have, or modular units are really good value for money options, and they have a very long term of impact for the grant. So really consider what assets or resources you have available to your organisation that you may want to build on, bring online, improve, that would improve the options for people in terms of both short and long-term accommodation. And sustainability beyond the grant program. So having clear plans for sustainability after the grant period, such as client contributions, long-term leases, or where you already have services in place. We'll speak more in the next slide, but really being clear that when the grant finishes, you won't be reliant on coming back to get a second grant just to keep it going, or that it's filling in gap funding. So I think really clearly showing your plans for how you sustain the impact of the grant beyond the 12-month grant period. Thanks. On to the next slide. So examples of unsuccessful themes. So this is just the other side of the coin from the previous slide. So limited value for money or duplication. So duplication of existing services where we can't clearly see the impact, or there's an unclear need for the extra funding. We have lots of products within homes and across our services, things like our rental subsidy programs. You need to clarify if you could use those products instead of a grant or as well as a grant. So we do look very clearly at the value for money or what's already in existence or available and how this grant adds to that. Capacity and service delivery concerns. So the ability to deliver the services effectively and safely, focusing more on tenancy management than supported TA. So we really do want to make sure that that you as an organisation, what you're proposing is within your ability to do, based on the grant, obviously, but where you're able to deliver that service as described. Sustainability risk, where there's a heavy reliance on grant funding without a clear plan to sustain the project after the initial funding period, that does raise concerns for the panel, and it is something they take carefully into consideration. A lack of innovation or additionality, that adding on, so extensions of existing programs without new approaches or solutions, or with minimal evidence of addressing the new needs or capacity needs. The panel will look at these. It's also taken into consideration there's lots of innovation out there. We particularly see a lot of proposals that offer to support people, say in temporary accommodation, to look at their pathways, to apply for housing, to support them while they're in TA. Absolutely, that's something that's important. Is it something that can have a clear impact, though, in this environment where that accommodation outcome really needs to be linked in? The panel is quite cautious about recommending those sorts of grants unless it's clear that that impact can happen through the process. Negative consequences of the project. We're always surprised when we come across these, and I think some of it's just in how the proposal's presented, but proposals that might relocate existing clients or reduce their services to make room for the grant outcome without clear overall benefits or details on supporting target groups. So often there's properties that are offered as part of the grant process. It may appear to the panel that those properties are currently lived in, and what happens to the current residents or tenants is not clear in the proposal. So being very clear, if you have a property that is part of your asset portfolio, that it is currently empty or underutilised, what happens to the people living in it if we provide you with the grant? Be very clear on that, and that's very helpful for the panel. A high capital costs with uncertain impact. So there's proposals with large capital expenses that don't show clear value or impact on reducing TA, or with unclear outcomes or justification for the high spending. We do consider capital costs, but we do need to look at the value for money within the grant and that there's a clear impact within that grant period. Okay, on to the next slide. Q&As. We've had a few, and I'm happy to just take more through the chat. So pop them in there and I'll see how many I can answer. I can see Peter's asked about individual feedback. You can arrange receiving the feedback by emailing shsprograms@homes.newsouthwales.gov.au. There it is. Thanks, Sabrina. We can provide you some panel comments. The panel were very careful for this round to provide some recorded comments to give back to each proposal as to what was successful or unsuccessful about it or how decisions were made. That's available in the first instance. Today's available, and then if you need more than that, please reach out and ask. There are so few questions. I can't believe this in the chat. So there must be more coming. Oh, I can't believe that I've answered all the questions. So if you do have something, it's often something others have to ask as well. So I always give that encouragement. Is there a cap on the financial ask? I've got two parts to the answer to this. So the first one is that in the reforming temporary and accommodation stream, there is a suggested cap of 500,000. If there's a bit beyond that that you want to ask for, certainly include it, but you would have to justify why you're going over the cap. So it is a suggested cap. And then overall, just remember the scale of the grant available. So it's $30 million allocated for this financial year. We've offered about 15 million of that. So there's about 15 million left that is yet to be allocated. That gives you some scale. And then there's also remembering that there's two streams. So we really do look to share that across both streams. So that helps you gauge the scale of what we're looking for. I've just answered your question, Joanne, in terms of the overall funds, just 30 million minus about 15 million. And can the HIF grant be directed to a service that has been discontinued because of another funding body? Possibly, but you would need to explain what happens after the 12-month period. We wouldn't want to have a case where we're re-establishing a service only for 12 months later for it to stop funding. So it's certainly something to consider, but you would have to address clearly that sustainability plan in the proposal. Peter, no, just the reforming temporary accommodation stream is the only one with that suggested $500,000 cap. The service reform and innovation doesn't have a suggested cap to it. Is there an expectation to commit operational support beyond the life of the scheme? If that is part of your sustainability approach, then yes, that needs to be articulated. Very much depends on the proposal and what mechanisms it has in it for that sustainability. How many were submitted in the second round and how many were successful? I think the team can bring that number up, just remembering that at this point they are offers and not necessarily through, because organisations do have the option to decline, particularly where we've given partial funding. Is there a recommendation you would make regarding the length of project plans and the general application? There is a project plan template in the application link. We highly recommend using that because it ensures that you answer all of our questions. In terms of that project plan, it really is, have you answered those questions that the panel will consider? If you have, then that should be sufficient. Do use that template as much as you can, because it means that you do cover each of the pieces. And you can go in and start answering the questions. They're online questions. They have boxes you fill in. So you can have a go, save it partway through, come back, change all your answers and keep going. So don't be afraid to go in and familiarise yourself with the applications and then come back and give it a go. I always do give the tip as well. Do prepare things in a Word document. You can cut and paste them across and then you have lots of time and space to be working on things. How long is the commitment used for? Sorry, David, I'm just not sure on your question. You have 12 months is the grant period, so the grant needs to be used up within the 12-month period. And will there be another stream in 2026? I think I go through some detail on that in the next steps slide, which comes after the question and answers. So I'll be excited to answer that. Okay, and Sandy has an answer there for you about how many applications were submitted. I think that's coming. Okay. We might go on to the next steps question in response to David. Peter, in terms of outlining the eligibility assessment, I'll let you read through the particular guidelines. I'm not going to do a great job at working through each of them, but do go through them online for your particular stream. And if you have any questions or need clarity, you can contact either our partnerships team, their contact information is on the website, or our SHS programs team. How long does the property need to be used for, described in the tender? It certainly needs to be available for the 12-month period of the grant. And then after that, the answer depends on your sustainability plan or intentions for that property. But we do very much look at the 12 months of the grant period and then some sustainability or impact beyond the grant period. Great. Sabrina's got the information in the chat about where the guidelines can be located, and then it's also in the slide pack, which you can get online soon. Okay, Snare's next slide, and we'll go through the next steps. And I'll keep answering questions as they come up. Spot purchases be considered for the Innovation Fund once the impact and suitability can be demonstrated. Yes, but again, you have to answer the value for money and considering the scale of the fund and what's available for the round, so just balancing that. But definitely they are considered. Again, tiny homes, modern methods of construction, modular homes, prefabricated homes have been successful in previous rounds, so that's a great way to make use if you have land available. So what's coming up? Applications for the third and final assessment round for 2024 close on the 30th of April at 5 p.m. So please, please, please do get them in by then. If you get one partially started, we do kind of monitor that and we'll send out some reminders closer to the 30th of April to say it's closing. Please get it in and finalised. So information on what the HIF looks like for next year, including future grant rounds, will be announced in the coming months. We're going to go through quite a significant redesign of it, and we're in the process of that for next year. That will include a stakeholder survey sent out as part of that process. So anyone who's registered or attended one of these information sessions will get a short online survey. We'll also be distributing that through our 3 peaks in partnership and through our community housing organisations. We do want to know what worked, what you liked about the grant process, both the priority areas and the process itself, to help us design next year's process and priority areas. We'll also be doing some internal work around what those priority targets would be for next year and following years. And so I really can't say that it's going to look like this or be through Smarty Grants. We're going to do that assessment process. We have the opportunity to do it quite differently for the next financial year if that's what would work best. And so getting your input on how this process has worked for you and your organisations will be really essential in that. So keep in touch with updates around on the main HIF website. That has everything you need in terms of program guidelines, information about successful grants and upcoming dates. So do keep a close eye on that one. And Rob has a question. Reforming TA. Yes, so if you have a proposal for the reforming TA stream, and Rob, you'll have to clarify if this wasn't your question, but it can include diverting people from TA or reducing their length of stay in TA, absolutely 100%. What we look for in that program, in that stream, is the value for money. So the likelihood of reducing that time in TA and the number of people that it can impact versus the cost of the diversion or reduction in stay. So we do balance those two, but absolutely it can just help somebody avoid TA entirely. And so it's for you in your proposal to clarify, one, how it would do that and that value for money impact. Okay. Yes, all items over $2,000 or purchases over $2,000 require a quote. If you are purchasing services to provide as part of that, then yes, that also needs to be part of a quote for that amount. And Dale, in my example of using tiny houses, is it applicable? No, you absolutely could be purchasing the tiny home or prefabricated unit. You can look at the round one ones that have been published online to see that there were quite a few where organisations have purchased a number of modular homes and also been provided with the covering the cost of the in-ground works and transport of that property. So those are ones that we definitely appreciate going past the capital amount of $5,000. We don't really think prefabricated homes are highly sellable. So we're confident to invest in those as a purchase through the grant. So yes, do absolutely put grants in for purchasing modular homes, prefabricated buildings, tiny homes that suit your property that you have and suit how you deliver your services. Okay. More questions? No, we seem to be finishing those up. That's absolutely fine. Please do use the email address that was published earlier, SHS, here we go, SHS program at homes.newsouthwales.gov.au. So that's the team behind all of this, and we will be more than happy to provide you direct information, send you to the right places on the website, or put you in touch with the team who support through Smarty Grants. So do reach out if you've got any questions or want clarification. We will be loading the recording of this session, the slides for the session, and an update to those FAQs based on your questions today. We will be loading those as soon as we can. It will be later next week, simply because it does take us a bit of time to package it, but they will be available later next week, we hope. And in the meantime, do go and look at those previous session information that is available on those websites. I think that's it for me. Dom? You're on mute, Dom. How did we turn you on mute?
I put myself on mute because I have a large dog in this room with me, which I didn't think the whole group would want to hear from. But anyway, there you go. Thanks very much, Kim. That was really informative. I know I learnt some things about the HIF that I hadn't known before. I hope that helps with all of the applications that you're going to put in for round 3. It'll be great to see some of the winning results of those applications. From here, as you know, if you go to SHS program at homes.nsw.gov.au with any of your questions, and this recording will be available to you after this call. So have a great weekend, and thanks for your time today.